All right, I was gonna do a little video. I had to throw my hat on. I was kind of about to take a nap. Hair's wild. Um, yeah, we'll see where this goes. A lot going on, man, in the field. Anybody that's tuned in, doing subtle levels, that's painting, working. Anybody that's going through like spiritual experiences and stuff like that, and awakening and whatever that means to you. I'm not even going to go into that, but if you've had some level of initiation and experience on a certain level, um, don't freak out. Like, don't freak out, even if it's like causing you to freak out because it's altering everything and changing the way you're able to be and relate to society. I get it. Believe me, that I was there. Um, 7.5 years ago, and it has taken about that time, honestly, about 7 years. It took about, yeah, right at about 7 years to fully, really integrate and be able to come back into the body and the world. When I say the body, I mean that, like, the body and the world, and be willing to interact and be, be in the world but not of it, right? Because I'm aware of a lot that's going on multiple levels. And I've talked about, you can go back in my old videos and stuff, and I've talked about this to varying degrees. And I don't look, there was a time period where I looked for this stuff, and I sought that because it seemed to have value and insight and information. And, let's face it, it's more interesting than, the mundane of this world, sure. And especially when you're living your life in a place where it's unfulfilled already. And so then there becomes this fantasy idea of chasing, experience in this, and gain, subtle ideas of gain that become entwined through that, and fulfillment that, there's a balance that's lost. It's really the harmonic, and I have a video on this, the harmonic and luciferic distortion, to where the balance and the willingness to be in the world gets removed. And, the renunciation tendencies, which a lot of, awakened people have, these strong renunciate ties. And you could really, it kind of like contracts and stuff too. And there's just karmic bondage, really, that has momentum to it and gets manipulated very easy. And there's a lot of false light stuff tied up in that, and spiritual communities and new age, non-duality teachings that have truth but don't have the full picture either. And so there's some subtle disempowerment and misappropriation of metaphysics that goes on there. That's the main thing. Misappropriation of metaphysics. What that means is you're accountable to the level of reality that you're at, right? Always and in all ways, right? That's that, to thy own self be true. Follow your truth. People talk about that. Well, yeah, there is, an absolute truth, right? There is absolute metaphysical truth, right? Whether people want to dispute that or not, there is absolute truth, law, God, source, that is, what is true, right? But there does, or where was I even going with this? I got off track. Within that, there does seem to be appropriate variations for where one is responding from that, and where there are entanglements and manipulated, like I was just talking about, the karmic momentum and ties that have the potential to keep one looping and in kind of outdated cycles. And I like to frame this really simply with, if you understand the concept of egregores, this is very simple what's going on, because the universe, the all is mind, right? So the absolute truth is all mind divided down into that. And within that, you have these egregoric frameworks, thought structures, ideas of thought. And, ultimately we are manifestations of this. This ties into also the science of morphogenetic fields, right, which is very occulted scientific information that was, has been known for, I believe, over 100 years now, but you don't hear much about these studies and finances, because this is ultimately where all the mind control and manipulation and the kind of magnetic frequency ties and manipulation that they use to keep people stuck in these kind of inorganic controlled thought fields, right, that keep you limited through your own choice, right? Because you're not limited, but it's through your own choice and allegiance through that egregore. Basically, you're serving a lesser entity than God and the truth of God and yourself, right? As a son and daughter and co-creator of God, as an extension of the vine of the kingdom, which you are, and never cannot be. But you can choose to forget that and choose to pretend. And this is, the power of the mind, the power of your freedom as a son and daughter of God gives you the potential to choose to give your allegiance and power, a co-creative power, away in and how you choose to see fit, because you have free will. So, with that being said, there's nothing new under the sun. And we have all made a choice to be here at this time and place together. So, no accidents, no mistakes, but there certainly are surprises. One of my favorite quotes. But that's it. So there will seem to be this maybe period, but I have to feel and know, and I've seen it actually recently, that like I said, it took me 7 years to integrate. I've seen it take even longer, but I'm seeing it take shorter. That's the whole thing. Those that are first will be last. Those that are last will be first. That is kind of how it flips around. And so what we're seeing now is this expedited potential for a lot of people to not really have the need to go through this wasteful duration in time and space in the same way, right? Because the information is already there in the morphogenetic field and template. It already has been. And this is the 100th monkey effect as well. So, for those of you who are following and don't think I'm a rambling lunatic at this point, you will have, boom, 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 see everything I'm saying, and it'll sink in, and maybe not, let it resonate. And I'm not, by all means, don't take everything I'm saying as truth. We have to experientially and subjectively verify things for ourselves, but everything is a reflection in the field and can be utilized for either delay or return, remembering. And that's what we're doing. We're remembering and taking back our responsibility and authority, and stepping into the willingness to co-create together and to see where everybody's at and to not judge that. That's the ticker, because then it's respecting the free will and not judging that through all the layers on however that shows up, and then finding your place in that here too. And then in all the, that doesn't mean that, because I'm not pushing away those other dimensional insights that show up anymore, but I'm not seeking them. And they seem to show up clearer and correlate. And I've had some cool stuff with some spider beings that I'm aware of on, I believe they're operating on like an 8th dimensional kind of plane, and they have been sinking synthetic grids into the field and looping basically the synthetic grids into people's fields and trying to shoot. But it's through choice. I want to be clear, it's through the people's choice, like I was just talking about with the egregores, to align with the egregores. But basically what we're seeing now is an expedited choice point of a willingness to be able to choose, right? And so that it's not a negative thing, and I guess I'm not going to go too much into the spiders now. That's just for whoever needs to hear it. But it's not like a full negative thing. They've kind of were tricked into service in a certain way, because humanity's own ignorance has us doing and feeding a lot of things and systems and beings and entities that we're just doing through our own free will, and they're not necessarily evil in the way that they're doing it. Some are. And the more evil ones, I would say, in that sense, are really at the top, that have tricked and coerced and isolated groups to work against each other, just like as above, so below. Just what goes on this planetary sphere is going on those dimensional levels, and they've got us fearing and confused and isolated and gridlocked against each other. So that's a whole story and a whole talk. But yeah, this has been fun, man. I needed to do this one and spit all some of this out. So I love y'all. I'm going to end with that and keep it short. Maybe that ties in and gives somebody some clarity. Have faith, trust yourself. That's what it's about too. The eradication of self-doubt, believing in yourself, trusting that feeling of these insights, and trusting the energies when it's off too. When you're chasing it, you'll see that when you're chasing, and you need to just let go and sit back and not be tuned into that, and get into the world and get some shit done and make some money. That's okay. Jesus, heaven forbid you make some money and build a easier, better life for yourself while we still have the financial system. I mean, nobody likes it, but it's still there. Fuck, what we gonna and slowly, it's not through the abstaining and not participating, because that's giving more power. So that's a whole talk too. I was about to shut up, y'all. Anyhow, I'm done. Y'all get it. I'm not preaching to anybody. I love y'all. Talking to myself here, but peace and love. Y'all have a good day, and talk to you later. Bye.